Alright guys, so I've gotten a number of requests to do a video on this topic, after I made this here comment on one of Sandman's videos titled, A Future Ruled by Women. Now, truth be told, I didn't bring up the fact that European queens started more wars than kings combined just to be edgy. It was just the first thing that just came to my mind. And then there's that really tired quote that goes, if women ruled the world, there'd be no wars. So, a few guys wanted to see a video on it, and I initially wasn't going to do it, but I said, I'll do it anyway, because why not? But keep in mind that I'm not just going to go on some red pill rage rant about how women are evil and how they shouldn't run anything, because frankly, I think that's a bit beneath me at this point, since I've left the red pill rage state a long time ago. Plus, I don't want to repeat things that we already know, so... Now, some people wanted me to get into the history of this, but I think it's more important to get into the more notable facts. I say that because there's not really a reason to make a long-winded video about this, because actually the explanation is really simple. Plus, I think there's other resources that explain the history better than I could, so I'm just going to link some stuff in the description. So, why do European queens start more wars than kings? It's pretty simple when you think of it this way. Now, think of the reason why a policewoman is more likely to use her gun than a male policeman. Or for example, think about domestic violence. Women are more likely to use weapons or use objects when engaging in a fight. And that's because the male enemies are going to look upon you as weaker, and also considered to be less competent. Now there's truth to that, because if you look at Merkel and other modern examples, they're terrible leaders. And I'm pretty sure there's some trad cuck out there that wants to bring up Deborah from Judges chapter 4 in the Bible, but let's just say that a broken clock is right twice a day and move along. But before I forget, I think it's also important to note this, is that typically there's no war that's decided all on its own, meaning that there's an oligarchy also in place. Whether it's a king or a queen, she typically has her advisors advising her on such things as war plans, because typically she's not going to have nearly as much experience as a war veteran general. So given that, when word gets out that a queen is now running a nation, there are going to be other nations that are going to see that nation is weak now because it's run by a woman. And they're thinking, hey, it's free real estate. We can win a chunk of territory and take it for ourselves. A really good example of this is King Frederick II of Prussia. Now, when he found out that Maria Theresa had took the Austrian throne in 1745, his immediate response was, no woman should be allowed to govern anything. Words of the wise, so he quickly declared a war and tried to take a chunk of it. Well, he successfully did. Also, they found out that it didn't really matter whether the queen was married or not either. Now, some would actually probably argue that just because the queen was married, that it was the king, her husband, that was advising her to go to war and so on. But they actually did some research on this, and they found out that there was really no difference. And they were still 27% more likely to be in wars regardless of marital status. Now, the only difference between a married and unmarried queen when it comes to war is that an unmarried queen is more likely to experience attack from outsiders. But, on the other hand, which I'm going to quote the article, saying married queens were the most likely to be bellicose, launching more wars than unmarried queens and kings of all types. The article continues to say, this might be because, thanks to gender norms, women rulers tended to benefit more from marriage alliances than kings. Married queens were likelier than kings to wage wars alongside allies, often spouses' nations. And queens frequently roped their husbands into helping rule, something that kings hardly ever did with their wives. Now, keep in mind that this doesn't just apply to Europe, it applies to the Middle East and everywhere else across the globe. Nothing has changed from the dawn of time. So, when women rule the world, they are equally just as capable of starting wars and mass destruction just like men. And as this article proves, even more so. So much for being sugar, spice, and everything nice, am I right? And that's basically all there is to it. I told you it wasn't going to be long, but yet I promised I was going to do this video, so here you guys go. I hope it was informative, and I hope you learned something new. And if I missed anything at all, please feel free to share it in the comment section, because if there's anything I missed, I wanna know. So that being said, I'm done. I have to go to sleep. Good night, guys.